Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 8 of 21 as we take a look back at what I wrote about 1 year ago about the candidates that participated in the first Democratic presidential debate of 2020. And we are now on to former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. And this is what I wrote. About Beto O'Rourke, who entered the race on March the 14th, 2019, and dropped out on November 1st, 2019. The Beto campaign is not on life support yet, but it is certainly not looking good for the former congressman from El Paso. His campaign relaunch really has not yielded better poll numbers, and O'Rourke is not getting the fawning national media coverage he once enjoyed. Beto's secret sauce in 2018 was he was running against the Democrats' public enemy number 2, Senator Ted Cruz. Beto was running against a man universally dislikable. O'Rourke was able to raise a ton of money and get the race a lot closer than it should have been, but even with that, he came up short. Beto in 2018 did not perform well in the debate against Cruz. He seemed frazzled and nervous, and not a good look for a candidate trying to win over voters. Bottom line, Beto is in the early stages of his eventual withdrawal. Beto has to have a good performance. A lackluster performance could be the end of his campaign. Beto's seemingly pro-open border comments will be examined thoroughly. And if you remember correctly, there were moments during the debates where Beto just had that deer in the headlight look. I remember this debate in particular. There was a moment where that occurred to him. Beto O'Rourke is a dynamic public speaker. He has a great natural ability to capture an audience in the palm of his hand and hold it there. And that is a gift. And that is a talent. Beto O'Rourke's problem, though, is when it comes to debates, because that really fast talking style that Beto has in his public speaking performance sometimes serves him well in those settings. You don't really examine the full scope of what he said. And in a debate, the moderators bring these points up. And that happened to O'Rourke a few times during this process. I think that Beto O'Rourke, as I said, in 2018 was running against the Democrats' public enemy numero 2 in Ted Cruz. And that in part fueled his massive campaign war chest. And it also helped him get the race a lot closer than it should have been. Every Democrat in the state of Texas got out and voted, and it still was not enough to get Beto O'Rourke across the finish line. But he did flip a couple of state legislative seats and 2 congressional seats. And that is to be commended. I think O'Rourke did somewhat of a disservice to himself by running in this race. I think O'Rourke should have focused on registering voters in the state of Texas, and should have laid the groundwork for a gubernatorial run in 2022. Uh, or he could have said, I didn't win the Senate seat this time in 2018. But I learned what mistakes we made from 2018. He could have said we had a great campaign, but there were key strategic mistakes we made, and we're going to correct them. And this time, in 2020, against John Cornyn, not only is Texas going to send me to the Senate, but we're going to flip Texas blue and send the Democratic nominee to the White House. That would have been phenomenal for O'Rourke, I think. But he ran in this Democratic presidential contest and got pushed to the left on some issues that I think him winning a statewide Texas race in Texas in the near future is going to be a pretty heavy reach. If he did not want to run for the Senate again, he could have announced after Congressman Will Hurd's retirement that he was running for Will Hurd's seat in Congress. Him and Will Hurd are very close personal friends, and I'm not suggesting he run against someone who he clearly has a like for and seems to have a great working relationship with. Hurd's district is next to O'Rourke's old congressional district, and you don't actually have to live in the congressional district you represent in Congress. You just have to live in the state. Now, granted, your opponents will definitely make use of it, and Hurd's district would be much more competitive than O'Rourke's old district was. O'Rourke's old district is a D plus 20, and Hurd's district is an even. And always super competitive. It has more Democrats in it than Republicans. Quite commonly, if you look at the combined total for the primaries, it's absolutely astronomical how many Democrats vote in the primary than do Republicans. But come election day, in recent elections, Will Hurd has come out on top, a Republican, barely, by the skin of his teeth, but he wins it. So, I think that would have been possibly a wiser move on O'Rourke's part. As I said, he ran in this race. It was really a scattershot campaign. Who can ever forget that cover of, I believe it was GQ, with a Beto looking, in the rugged Texas Hill Country, born for this or something. Oh my God. And of course, live streaming your root canal. Come on, seriously. I'm all for transparency in politics, but get that crap out of here, man. So that's my thoughts on the former congressman from Texas's exit from the race. And tomorrow, that will lead us into some of the more top-tier candidates. And our first top-tier, what I would consider top-tier candidate to depart the race, will cover Kamala Harris. This one's going to be tough because I had a lot of high hopes for Senator Harris early on in the race. But boy, is that campaign going to run into some issues. It had the potential to be a great campaign. That I think they made some key strategic mistakes along the way, and it cost them dearly, and possibly permanently. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great night and a good tomorrow.